All right. We are live. It is a beautiful day outside. We had some snow today. Super Bowl 57 is set. It means the bad news is we are down to one NFL game for the rest of this season. Until next season, lots of news that came out today. Lots of information to download from the games. First of all, quick reaction before we jump in. How was this weekend of football for you?
It's honestly, it was kind of depressing. It wasn't like I didn't think the games lived up to the hype at all. Obviously, that 49ers Eagles game got out of hand real quick. You're playing with the quarterback who literally should be bagging groceries. Um, then you brought Brock back in, but he couldn't throw a football, and so it kind of every time you look at the scoreboard, it was just 7 more points for the Eagles.
Mhm.
And then in the Chiefs and Bengals game, I'm, I don't think lived up to the hype at all, man. Like those are two high powered offenses. I didn't feel they really got anything going. And kind of just like I said, Chris Jones took over that game, and he made sure that everybody in Cincinnati knew that he's the new mayor of Cincinnati, and that's how it's going to be going forward.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. And Josh, you were watching those games. Like, what were your reactions? That quickly Purdy goes out. Like, how was the weekend for you? I know that you lost a little bit of money. You sent us a ticket that didn't look like it held up very nice for you, but I think the rest of us were plus money this weekend. So why don't you give us a negative money side from yours?
well, once Brock Purdy went out, we all kind of knew how that game was going to go. With a defense like the Eagles had and the way they get after the passer, Josh Johnson looked lost, which I mean, who wouldn't be as a fourth string quarterback? And then in the Bengals game, the Bengals fully like themselves, but neither did the Chiefs. Like Chad said, it was two high-powered offenses where the defenses came out to play, I guess. And I guess we're going to talk about it later more, but the refing also took over in that game. I'm not sure what you guys thought. You still can't blame the officials. You make the plays out there, but that was a rough one, I would say, when the Bengals way. So
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we're gonna get into that one. We'll go in order. I think that the 49ers minus or plus 2.5 was a little bit too small of a spread. I think overall, no matter who plays quarterback for that team, everybody's undervaluing and underappreciating what the Eagles did, not only to the Giants, but obviously to the 49ers. But the biggest news coming out of that, whatever, the Eagles have moved on to the Super Bowl. Great. It means that I can break out my Steagles shirt. So I don't know if you guys know any information on the Steagles, but I can get into that if we got a little bit of time later. But like I said, the biggest news is Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, gets himself hurt. Not only is he hurt, he is significantly hurt to the point of having a torn UCL. Torn UCL
Yeah,
means that
Tommy
you
John.
cannot. Basically, yeah. I mean, that's I mean, it could require Tommy John. I don't know if this case it does, but um, usually in those cases, depending on how torn it is, like that's the direction you would go. This is kind of what we talked about when I thought Josh Allen might have had the same thing, but he bounced back. It wasn't quite as significant. But they're saying a minimum 6 months for Brock Purdy here. So a few different things happen. I mean, Trey Lance definitely is back in the fold to be the quarterback of the 49ers. I think Brock Purdy is probably going to be an insurance or a car salesman somewhere in Iowa. And it's kind of not his fault, but he had his magical run. I think he had to take him to the Super Bowl to be walking into training camp as QB1. At this point, I don't think that they're going to bring in a Brady. Josh Johnson, not a significant role player on this team next year. Brock Purdy probably walks in as the backup or is, the inactive quarterback because of how significant his injuries and all the reps he's going to miss in practice. Uh, yeah, I think it's a bigger deal than it's going to get credit for until the offseason. But right now, if you're the 49ers, not losing that game wasn't worst case scenario. What happened to Brock Purdy and making the decisions that they're going to have to make in this offseason now is worst case scenario for the 49ers.
Yeah,
yeah,
like
and
go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say I was actually gonna ask you a question, Chad. As you played QB growing up, we know how it goes. Injury like that on your throwing arm, like tell people how that could affect you, especially when it's that deep.
Well, it just comes down to the big thing is if you get grip the ball. that was the first thing they're really concerned about. Um, I'm not going to sit here and say I've had a mess up
Yeah.
elbow before. Yeah, I think it's called tennis elbow. I don't know, but yeah, like it's with the second you get to grab a ball and you can't, it's over. Shane, don't laugh. And like that's the biggest thing. And I'm assuming his release point would be changed by that because if you can't come over the top on it, he's going to shoot the ball out like this, so the ball's going to spin sideways, opposed to coming over the top where it spins downwards. That would be the one big thing if you can't rotate the arm around. And then other than that, like it's just now what do they do going into next season? Kind of touching on what Shane said, like the winner out of all this was Trey Lance. It might have saved his career.
Right.
They have two options. They can either trade one of them because you could probably get a good value for Trey Lance. Still, I don't. Might better get the bottom tier first rounder, top of the second. There's no value on Brock Purdy, unfortunately, so you might as well keep him because it's going to be the lesser of two evils. You can put him on the practice roster if you need to. You can deactivate him. You're still paying a kid that was drafted in the 7th round opposed to someone that's drafted in the 1st round. That's where the business sense has to come in. And they're already pleading in San Francisco for Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson. They want a quarterback. Like that team is built to win now. So to go to the Trey Lance experience, like no, that's already off the table. That is gone. It's either going to be a veteran quarterback that comes in for a very short period of time, or they're going to go to a guy like I'll use Lamar as the example, where they can sign him to a long-term deal. But if Lamar goes down, that you have Brock right there. So Lamar's style doesn't kind of interfere with what you're doing because at the end of the day, you have a capable backup who's ready to roll at any time. He's going to be like the future of Jimmy G. Like that's what he's going to become.
Right. And you know what? To expand on something that you were getting at for grip point and like what it would feel like, to put it into like simplest terms, like I didn't have that happen to me, but when I played baseball, it would be the equivalent to trying to throw a wet water balloon. So even if you're trying to like get a good grip on it, you're not going to be able to. And if you do, it's going to slide out of your hands, and it's not like that's why they didn't attempt any passes. That's why they were handing it off at the end. Clearly in the game out of necessity, and definitely not in the game because they thought that they had any kind of an opportunity. I would say good on him for being tough enough to go back into the game and not make a farce out of like, Christian McCaffrey trying to play quarterback or Kyle Juszczyk trying to play quarterback. But automatic, we're heading into the offseason, automatic rule change that needs to happen. Every team needs to have 3 quarterbacks dressed. No exception.
Yeah, you shouldn't take a roster spot for that. You should get to dress your 3. You act like you schedule one as your 3rd. And if he goes in, though, then you cannot come back in. Like, it got to be like one of those, kind of like how you have the emergency goalie in hockey.
Exactly.
Like, you have one guy that's dressed. So just say if the 3 of us were the quarterbacks, whoever 1 and 2 were, Josh, just because you're the newest one here, you're automatically QB number 3. If Shane and I both go down, if you have to go in the game, one of us cannot come back. That way it doesn't count as a roster spot. But that way you don't get in the put situation where with the 49ers had to put either Brock in, who cannot throw a ball, or you had to go to a guy like Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. And the
It
thing
shouldn't
was
cost them a roster spot. That's be the big thing that they figure out.
And that's the thing. I honestly think if you have a 3rd quarterback that isn't Josh Johnson, you actually might be better off depending on who that quarterback is. But now since you have 2, and then honestly, I might have just put in McCaffrey because you could see they had to throw the ball to win. But even still, then you're getting rid of one of your best playmakers. It's a very tough spot to be in, and when injury happened, they were done. So we'll see where they go forward. I think they're going to move on from Trey Lance. I think he goes to a team like the Saints, who don't necessarily are looking to draft a QB just because of their draft spot, but want to bring in a guy that's proven that he has some talent, and then they're going to bring in a veteran. I think, like Chad said, Green Bay, I'm not sure if you guys heard this weekend, apparently wants to move on from Aaron Rodgers.
Yep,
so that's the place that makes the most sense for him to go. I also saw something that if not, and they want to get rid of Jordan Love, then Jordan Love could go to San Fran. But I think it's more of the other way around. I think you see a guy like Aaron Rodgers going to San Fran for sure.
So it makes sense for like the hometown aspect, and we're not going to bury the offseason because we still actually have a pretty big game to be played. But everything that's happening is lining up that Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets. one, that's historically where the Packers have traded their quarterbacks. But two, all the offensive like staff that's formulating in New York now, whether it be LaFleur or what was the other guy? Hackett. Yeah, like so LaFleur's like third brother or something is going to be the quarterbacks coach there. Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator again. That's something that he's comfortable with. They have some receivers there. They have the run game. It makes sense. But yeah, I mean, not to be disrespectful to Philly, I think that what Philly did proved that spending money is the way to win. Building through the draft, yeah, building through the draft just isn't the thing, right?
Yeah, they usually last 3 years. That's been your Super Bowl champions. Tampa, LA, now Philly's in the Super Bowl all over again. All three of them went out and spent money in a win now fashion. They paid off for the first two. Now they're going to go into the rebuild and go back into their hole. Well, that's like the Phillies kind of in that situation now. Like, which luck they have a young quarterback, so they can build around that. But they went and bought all the pieces around that to make Jalen succeed. They went and got probably one of the best pass rushes in probably the last 20 years to ever be in the NFL. When you only have to send 4 or 3 in some situations, it makes your defense look really, really good. It's that simple. And that's what they did in Philly. They made a defense that is vicious and violent. And they got 2 good corners and a really good fucking defensive line.
And that's the thing with Philly, because you look at guys look at their interior defensive line, even not those edge rushers that they have coming off. Ndamukong Suh's your third string. You got Jordan Davis, who they got obviously through a draft, who's a monster, and then Fletcher Cox in there as well. And then when you're talking about the back end, Darius Slay was a top corner for the Lions. Like, and now he's on a good team now, but he's played probably one of his best years, and he's up there in age, but he's playing one of his best years of football. And
Bradbury's sick too, James Bradbury.
Yeah, Bradbury, from Giants to Philly, like, it's just they built a veteran strong team, and obviously eventually it's going to catch up with them. But if you win a Super Bowl, nobody cares. They talk about how you won.
Yeah. What about this whole cuckolding thing of the Empire State Building? Yeah. Have you guys seen this, right?
No, I got sent to the chat and I was working, so I didn't get to see
All right. So the Empire State Building got lit up in green after the Eagles had made the Super Bowl, which, I mean, that makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, it's not even the same state, obviously, everyone knows that. But not to mention, like, this is your rival. Like, this is like, that's like if Dallas were to light up the Jerry Dome in Eagles. Like, this doesn't make any sense that they would do this. And the only thing I could reference to it is if the New York Giants are cucks and if they don't mind watching. Like, this is a little bit embarrassing. Not only did they whip your ass in the playoffs, but you're congratulating them for going to the Super Bowl. This is like, is football gone softer than what we're allowing it to be here? Am I looking too much into this? Like, this is embarrassing.
Football's a soft sport now, man. It's the way the world is. Everybody's friends, and if you can't win, you got to just cheer on the guy that beat you, right? That's how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine like MGM in Detroit getting lit up in Packers green if the Packers were in the Super Bowl? No way.
You know how much. Well, at least me personally, I hate the Packers. If that happened to my team, I couldn't imagine.
You know they're gonna put Three Rivers, the bridge there, just put in purple if the Ravens win a game. Could you imagine?
People would burn down the bridge. Like, that's the difference. Like, the Pittsburgh fans would, if they lit up the bridge in purple or orange for either the Bengals, well, it would never be the Browns, but whether the Bengals or the Ravens, if they did that, like, Steelers fans would go and burn down the bridge just to be that spiteful, because that is what true hatred is.
Can you imagine, like, a Philly fan, if this happened in Philly? Like, Rocky would come out of retirement and have to make a movie to go win the city back.
Because, well, he's a real person, right?
Yeah, he's a real person. He has to come out of retirement.
Yeah, it was a cool atmosphere. There was a lot of like interesting people that, like, Bradley Cooper's going to be there, Mike Trout's going to be there. Obviously, the Super Bowl is going to be pretty hyped. The Philly fans are going to be pretty wild, but I think that the Eagles they were definitely out of the gate undervalued. I don't know if you guys saw the opening line as soon as Kansas City won. It was an automatic 2 points to Kansas City because of all the bets that hammered through. And I don't know if this was a record, but I just happened to notice it. 10,000 bets were placed in the first half an hour in Vegas after after the Chiefs game. And in that span, the line had moved to -2 for the Eagles. So a 4-point swing, 10,000 bets were placed. I can't even tell you how much money it was. There's going to be $1 billion or more bet on the Super Bowl this year.
Josh, quick question. Who's the guy that plays for the 76ers?
Which one?
Joel
Embiid?
whatever.
Joel Embiid.
Did you see the picture of him and Kevin Hart side by side?
Yeah.
Kevin Hart is 5'2". This guy is 7 feet tall. Kevin Hart came out to his belly button. And it was like, it's cute when father and son pose together at the game. That was the caption.
Going off that, did you see Trent Williams' body that, going a little off topic, and that Eagles guy? Now that's what the Giants fans should be doing to the Eagles fans next time they play it. I hope you guys saw it. You guys watched it.
Trent Williams ragdolled that dude.
Yeah, he treated it like that was Royal Rumble style.
Yeah.
He got hyped up in WWE the night before, right? He just got pissed off he wasn't in the Rumble.
Yeah, and you know, it was cool, like cool on the 49ers for not giving up and not taking it, laying down. You're gonna put up a little bit of a fight. I think that I don't know, like as much as I want to hate the Eagles coach, I'm having a really hard time hating him. Especially, he like tried to be like humble and cool when Kyle Shanahan came across the field. Kyle Shanahan wanted nothing to do with him whatsoever, and he even tried to be cool about it. But like at the end, he realized, and I think that he got that like sour look on his face. And I can only imagine myself in that situation, and I know how sour I'd be if I was trying to like, you know, calm somebody down, and they were continuing to do that. Like, think of how spiteful he's going to be in the next game. It's going to happen. Like, I'm not going to say that the 49ers and Eagles are going to start having some kind of rivalry because they're not going to play each other every year. But Sirianni will have a beef with Kyle Shanahan forever now. We'll never go away.
What I'm picturing is like when Shane and I played slow pitch, we would almost get fights on the handshake line. We almost fought a team that was their whole team was based off Nicolas Cage. That's not a lie.
It's true. It's true.
Every single player as a team name had one of Nicolas Cage's movies as their name. And we almost beat up a whole team of Nicolas Cage wanted.
The good old days. That's the pre-COVID softball boys. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a ton to break down in this game. I think that the Eagles' run game is there. Rich Get Richard, Kenneth Gainwell, rookie out of Memphis, wasn't even a running back at Memphis. I don't think he was just like a guy that they had an offensive weapon. Now he's turned into, I don't know. I wouldn't even call him a third down running back. More of like a scat back, I guess, is kind of what it's called now in the NFL. But
you got roles.
Yeah, exactly. Like exactly on that same mindset. Quick, gets around, nice change of pace. When you got Miles Sanders, this guy, and Jalen Hurts, the second a defense gets tired, they're screwed. Like, there's nothing you can do if these guys have fresh bodies, keep rolling out. It's the same thing for their defensive line. They're 7 deep or 8 deep on the defensive line. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's either 5 or 6 of them had double-digit sacks this year.
The whole line did. 5 of them did.
Yeah, so it's going to come down to, you know, everyone's going to be very, very in on the Chiefs here. Everyone's going to want this Patrick Mahomes thing. There's going to be a whole lot of talk about how 2 brothers are playing each other in the Super Bowl, even though they're both on offense and they're not actually going to be playing each other, so it really doesn't matter. But I think that quietly, the Eagles are going to beat the shit out of the Chiefs.
I don't think it's close. I don't think it's quietly. I think they're going to violently beat the shit out of the Chiefs.
Like, it just gets out of hand.
I think it's going to be a beatdown.
And one thing that I watched in all four kickers yesterday was nobody kicked it through the end zone, Chad. So you know what that means.
Yeah, we're hammering that all day long.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
favorite
Super Bowl
bet
show, we'll bring that up for you.
Yeah, that is our favorite bet every single time.
Yeah.
Not a coin flip?
No, it's if the opening kickoff's a touchback.
Yeah.
It gets us hyped. We're probably the only people in the world that get hyped about that one bet.
it'll dictate how the game goes, whether you're getting in those live bets or if you're going to be just sitting there licking your wounds. But we're going to be watching the game with one of the most hardcore Eagles fans of all time. So get your popcorn ready for that guy. Get your popcorn ready for the game.
Yeah.
Chad remembers the last time they won the Super Bowl. So
he will not be going live at any moment during that game.
no, he's not. He is not live friendly. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else about this game you want to put together. I mean, the big story was the second game, obviously because it was more competitive. It was round 4 in the heavyweight fight between Burrow and Mahomes. First one Mahomes gets. Elephants in the room, boys. Is the NFL rigged? We're
1,000,000%.
So Cincinnati got completely screwed here.
I'm going to tell you right now, I had this conversation driving home today, and I was on the phone, and I was just like, I've never wanted to ever think this, and I'm really, really hoping I'm the guy that's wrong. But there was $1 billion spent probably this weekend, close to, and there's going to be another $1 billion spent next week in 2 weeks. And all I kept thinking was, and I'm talking like I bet small potatoes compared to some people in the world. And I kept talking about the value of that Cincinnati's Bengals pick at plus 750 to win the Super Bowl. They were under. So if you would have taken that bet 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden Vegas could be getting a little scared because that's a lot of money they might have to flip. And then you go into this week's game, they were still a plus 120 and change. Everybody was hammering Bengals money line, and it's getting now like, and I'm sorry, the house always wins, and I never really hope that this isn't it. But like, has gambling taken over the pro football?
Well, yes. I mean, but in reality, it always had it in like out there anyway. We just didn't have like a way to track it. There was always somebody in the back room somewhere that had a little book going. But I agree. I mean, when something gets bet heavily one way, and we see that all that information is at our fingertips now. So the first thing that we think when, for the first time that I can remember, I saw an NFL do-over. I was like, what? No, come on, an NFL do-over. And then, even on the second try, doesn't work out. Eli Apple did hold the guy. You can't make that up, but that play shouldn't have been happening anyway. Whatever. Didn't result in points. Is what it is. But there was a lot of stuff that was going on there. I mean, even if you look at the kickoff or the punt return at the end of the game, Sky Moore, big draft guy for them, hasn't made a whole lot of splash. Makes I think it was like a 25-yard return. However, if you look at it, like if that was a regular season game, they're starting that drive on the 25-yard line because that is 100% a block in the back. But because there was too much insight put into it, and if you want to overdevelop the rule or overanalyze the rule, they're saying that because the block began engaged at the front and turned into a block in the back, it's not actually one. Well, I got to tell you, I've watched a lot of football. They usually call it, And I think that there was something to be said about wanting it that way. Now, I am surprised because, if we're talking about a script, things are being written, things are kind of being like weighed a certain way. I honestly would have thought that they would have wanted to try out these new overtime rules. The only reason that you wouldn't want to try them out is if you think that somehow it's going to be flawed again and you're going to have to change it again. But all of that got thrown out by another Cincinnati Bengals player making another stupid personal foul penalty at the end of a game. It took me right back to 2015 when Vontaze Burfict laid out Antonio Brown, and it was a pass interference and a personal foul. It was like a 60-yard penalty that put us into field goal range that had the Bengals on their way out the door.
But the thing is when you look at the game in a whole, and these holding calls the Bengals are getting, some of them are holds, like offense, defense. There was penalties, like players decide the game. I watched Trey Hendrickson come off the edge and get absolutely blocked right in the back on a holding, or block in the back in the first. It was the fourth quarter. It was the start of the fourth. There's no call. That's fine with me. Let the players decide the game. Chad knows this. Shane, you know this too. And in every play of a football game, there should be a penalty. There's a hold on the line every play. No matter what happens, there's a hold. There's a hold somewhere on that line that's not called. So why is one team getting it and one team not? And then even that hit on the QB out of bounds, I personally don't think that was roughing the passer. Not in that situation. You're not calling him one touch on the back, Mahomes laying on the ground like this. I've seen 10 times worse QBs get hit, even out of bounds, and it not be called. So then why don't
you're letting your betting ticket say that for you? You're like
exactly.
that's 100% a personal foul. Like there's no debate that that's a personal foul. I think that
the guy before though, when Joe Burrow, the ball's way gone, shoves Joe Burrow right to the ground. Is that not a definition of roughing the passer as well? They didn't call that one.
First off, only 4 guys in the NFL got roughing the passer calls. Aaron Rodgers,
is one of them.
Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. It might only just be 3 now. It was Drew Brees was the other one for the longest time. The ones that blow my mind, and it's the holds that I feel Kansas City gets away with, and it wasn't just this game, it's all year. And I'm going to say I'm not even blaming the refs because I think at that point the refs become a fan. Patrick Mahomes does some pretty cool things to make plays happen and buy time that their eyes get taken away from the line. And like, as a fan, I watch him do it. I'm like, well, then you go back to the replay. I'm like, well, that was a fucking hold. But he gets away with more holding calls because I think the way that he buys time, people don't like you're not watching the line anymore. You're now watching him. And like once again, to make sure he gets protected, to make sure he gets those roughing the passer calls. You can't have a $60 million man, the face of the NFL, be getting injured, especially the week before the Super Bowl. They're gonna protect that guy at all costs. And so yeah, that slap on the back, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, that was a penalty. You know you can't do that. That's whether your ticket got ruined or not, doesn't matter. That was a penalty.
It's 100% a penalty.
But it's the stuff that happens, I think, even before that. Even on that play, there was a massive hold that got him outside the pocket. That got let go. And so it's one of those things where I was more frustrated with those things than I was with like some of the call like that and the Eli Apple holding. Because the Eli Apple shouldn't have ever been a play in the first place. That's what it comes down to. But yeah, like I think it's the calls that the Chiefs are getting that no one else gets. But I think it's almost like, and that's where people are like start putting those conspiracy theories in because it's like the NFL wants Patrick Mahomes in the final in the Super Bowl. It's that simple. If they can't have Tom Brady, they want Patrick Mahomes. Like those are your 2 options. I can tell you right now, Aaron Rodgers would not be in the Super Bowl. They do not want that guy rewarded anywhere.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And like if we wanted to draw another foul that's like a little ticky-tacky, the intentional grounding, I actually thought was roughing the passer. And when it got called, I was like, oh, okay, like somebody from New York must have radioed them, like, we can't, like, it's too obvious. We can't do this. And then they doubled down the other way. And even though P. Ryan is 3 yards away, because the ball lands behind the line of scrimmage, again, to me, that's ticky-tacky, that's bullshit. The difference between whatever, that would have been 3rd and 10 and 3rd and 17, obviously changes things. That's what leads to the punt that gets Patrick Mahomes obliterated out of bounds, which is 100% a penalty, but all the things that lead up to it are 100% not penalties. And I don't know. Do I think that football can be rigged? I don't, but I think it fits into like what we're talking about because in reality, like even like if you're the president of the United States, you can't hide shit. Like look at all these idiots that have like confidential documents in their house. Like eventually that kind of stuff comes out. Like people figure it out. Like you can't have how many people friends, yeah, but how many people have played in the NFL, right? Like
yeah.
If it was rigged, or even if it was the refs that don't make a lot of money, if all the refs were involved in like some kind of rig session, everybody would have their own gambling ring on the side because you already know the way it's going to go. I do think that, and the picture I put into our group chat of Ron Torbert and Patrick Mahomes doing a jersey swap. I think that's hilarious. That's like proof that the internet's still undefeated. But the refs just suck. It's not that football is rigged. It's just the refs suck, and they need to figure out a better system to either take calls away or add calls if they're needed somewhere.
And I don't believe the NFL is rigged. Sure, But is it really rigged if the Bengals were in the Super Bowl last year? They're not the team that they would want to go to the Super Bowl anyway. So,
But there was a bunch of questionable shit that happened in the Super Bowl last year that led to the Rams winning. So,
exactly that way too. But play football, we know how it goes. Some days are not your days when it comes to calls, but in the end, you can't blame it. You have to be the person that's going to step up and make. They still had the ball. It's not like they didn't have the ball, and they had the punt. Obviously, there was things leading to the punt, but be that guy that just goes against the grain and makes every play into the better team, and there'll be no question. So, in the end, they lost. Yes, there was things that happened, but you just got to keep moving forward. And for the Bengals, they're going to be a team that's going to be back in that game. So they'll be back for vengeance. So
I just think that Mahomes and Joe Burrow should get on the next Jake Paul card and just sort it out.
they were talking a lot of smack after that game. The Chiefs were the dad.
Yeah.
All I seen was that he said I was smoking the Burrow cigar. Patrick Mahomes' dad. I'm like, holy smokes, this is crazy. Like, when have we ever seen these little sound bites of just all this shit talk?
All because of
Patrick Mahomes' dad. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes' dad was cooked, and I'm pretty sure that when he said he was smoking the Joe Burrow, I think that he might have had something a little different in his rapping. Yeah, I don't believe that was cigar tobacco.
No, not at all.
No.
He was having way too much fun if it was.
And yeah, like for the mayor, reality, we're all smart enough to know that it wasn't the mayor that actually said that. It was just whatever, somebody runs the social media for him, right? Like that, people always ask me shit that happens on our Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't do that shit. So if one of you guys ever did something crazy on our Instagram or our TikTok, I would find out through somebody else.
And she would be like, Chad, what are you doing?
Yeah, like the mayor of Cincinnati probably found out because he got home and his kids were like, Dad, why did you say that? And then he's like, what? Give me the iPhone so I can check the Twitter. And then then he figured it out. But it's obviously that's not the better story. The better story is to say that the mayor got whatever and he's an idiot for allowing somebody to do that for him. But what a non-story. That guy is a joke, and whoever did that for him is really, really bad at the social media stuff.
And yeah, that guy's not winning his next term. I'll tell you that much. He will not get reelected.
Yeah.
His political career is over.
Can you impeach a mayor? That's probably a better question for Liam.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can. You can? Okay.
Yeah,
there you go. Couple dummies on here. We don't know any better. Yeah. So it didn't get to it, and we didn't get a chance to touch on it last week because there was so much other stuff going on. But there's a lot of buzz and a lot of talk about championship games now being played at neutral sites. So I'm not surprised by that because in reality, I watched the NFC Championship game, and the atmosphere for the fans was crazy. But the atmosphere for the broadcast, not so much, right? Kevin Burkhead and Greg Olsen, I'm sorry, those guys aren't moving the needle for me. I felt a lot different about the Chiefs and the Bengals because there was a lot of, the crowd noise came into it. Anytime Jim Nantz speaks, you assume it's some kind of primetime moment. And even though this group might not like Tony Romo, he does have the voice for the primetime moment now because that's how we recognize it now.
I can understand him with Chad Mahomes' dick that far down his throat.
Well, I just think it was nice that Collinsworth let him take a turn.
It was absolutely ridiculous how much he just worshipped the ground Patrick Mahomes walked on. And I think it's but then when Joe Burrow and the Bengals started coming back, it was I better taste this other one and see if it tastes just as good as Patty's. That's really how I feel about Tony Romo.
All right, well, Chad decided to sugarcoat it tonight. Josh, how do you feel?
I mean, I'm not a big Tony Romo fan. I think even I put something in the group chat last week. He said something completely opposite of what happened on the play. He does have the voice. I will give him that. He has the voice for broadcasting. But sometimes I just question some of the stuff he says. And, whether you like him or not, that's who you're stuck with most likely. So we're just going to have to get used to him.
Who's calling the Super Bowl?
Yeah. It's going to be Burkhead and Olsen.
How How did Greg Olson get to be on Fox's #1 team?
Troy Aikman and Joe Buck left.
You can't tell me. Was Daryl Johnson busy or?
So, for some reason, they have a beef with Daryl Johnson. I don't know. He must have done something like somewhere to somebody. But Daryl Johnson, and I think Daryl Johnson's with Joe Davis. Am I right on that? And Joe Davis is kind of like the new Joe Buck. Like he does the baseball games. He's the guy that should be the next guy. But that's the group that I prefer. And anytime the Steelers played on Fox, we did end up with those guys. Like I would rather listen to those guys. But back to the original question, how do you guys feel about the conference championship games potentially being moved to neutral sites? And it'll be essentially done the same way that the college football playoff is done, if it all goes according to plan.
I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
I think when you're the first seed, or even say you're the second seed and you're playing the 4th seed, whatever it is, if you're that higher seed that won games all season, you should have that home field advantage. We've seen the importance of home field advantage. We all know it, especially at that level of play. The crowd noise and everything else in football does make a difference. Joe Burrow has to scream in the huddle, where Patrick Mahomes is whispering in the huddle, right? It's a big difference. But I personally think you got to keep these home games because it adds another factor into betting. Most teams that are on the road are going to be plus money. So if a road team wins, obviously you're going to be paying more out, those sorts of things. So I personally think keep it out as.
Well, they're just trying to be. I do think that it's a good idea, but it's a good idea for more different reasons. Like, I think that we're either a year or two away from having 8 playoff teams, not 7. So the #1 seed isn't even going to have a bye anymore. So you're kind of removing that from it. You're taking some of the strength off of the regular season games and putting them more into the playoffs. But if you could sell, how many seats are at Arrowhead? Like 70,000?
Yeah.
75,000? If you can get the extra seats inside the Georgia Dome and get it to 90,000, that's all extra revenue. You can control the exact weather that your teams are playing in. The broadcasts are easier to do because no one's freezing their ass off out there. It makes way more money for the new way that the NFL is going, which I don't know if you guys know this, but YouTube just got Sunday Ticket.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's going to affect us. I think that's going to just affect the way that it is in the U.S. because we still have DAZN. But the people that run YouTube want to be able to stream in 4K or 8K or 12K or what are we on now? 16K? Liam will be able to tell us. But okay, we're still on 8K. I guess I got ahead of myself. They want to do an 8K broadcast indoors or at nice weather. They would like to have an NFC Championship game at the Rose Bowl, and the Rose Bowl to the average NFL fan probably means absolutely nothing. But the Rose Bowl game, regardless of who's playing in it, that's a game that I will never miss because I love that stadium. Now, SoFi, Jerry World, Minnesota, I don't even know what they call it. Buffalo's getting a new stadium. All these huge, brand new stadiums, they don't want to do championship games in Kansas City. The stadium sucks. They don't want to do championship games in, what's another shitty stadium?
Lambeau.
Lambeau
Field.
Lambeau, the nostalgic factor of the new sports fan is gone. People just want to see the experience in the best possible product. Lincoln Financial Field, it's dog shit. There's nothing to it. There's there's nothing going on there. Let's drop it in Arizona. People love having games at Raymond James Stadium. Go over to the Ray J. Play it's going to be the last time Bucks are in the NFC Championship game for a long time. Why don't we just start putting the games there?
Well, they can't go to Georgia because Chick-fil-A doesn't open on Sundays. So there's no way they're putting an NFC or AFC Championship game in there on a Sunday.
Yeah, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Whether that happens next year or the year after, it's another reason why I don't think that the NFL is rigged, as we were saying, because the NFL desperately wanted to test how it was going to go with the Bills and the Chiefs at the Georgia Dome or Mercedes-Benz, whatever they call it now. And they didn't get the opportunity to do that. But I do think it's just, it's in the tea leaves. It's happening. As much as the salary cap just went up $20 million and, they're signing all these new TV deals and all this new money is coming in and everything's rolling in. This is a new revenue stream and a new way to inject, I don't know, I guess profit sharing to the stadiums that really don't get to host these games. And if you think of the teams like, you think Jerry Jones wouldn't want to host an NFC Championship game every once in a while? It just makes too much sense.
Yeah. And if it comes down,
I'm not for these neutral. I don't like the neutral site. I want the home team to have their advantage. You got to play for something. I think it just takes the value of the regular season out the window as well. And so I think you'll see a lot more guys getting benched earlier in the season then, if that's what it comes down to, if you're not playing for nothing. If you're not going to get that one seed and if you're battling for nothing, literally, then you're going to see guys start getting benched week 15, week 16, week 17. Because what's the point of your guys playing if there's not going to change? It's not going to change anything. You're not playing for nothing.
No, and I don't even disagree with that. I think that we got to see a little bit of it this year, but look how bad a lot of the fantasy football stuff is getting with exactly what you're saying. If you don't have a shot at the first bye and you have the ability to kind of rest your guys and sit them out, look what Tennessee did. Obviously, they didn't have a chance at wild card, but regardless of what happened in the last 2 weeks of the year, they were able to walk into that game against the Jaguars and just do what they needed to do. They lost, but Derrick Henry sat out a couple of games. Tannehill wasn't around. They had a few other guys that just weren't playing. But the impact that has on people's fantasy football, which I think fantasy football is getting ready to die. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but
now that you can bet weekly in single game bets and props bets, fantasy football is done.
Yeah, and as the seasons get longer and exactly what we're talking about, there's going to be more playoff teams, so there's going to be less value on hammering the starters. Plus, time sharing with different players, and unless you're allowed to start 4 running backs nowadays, or just start a backfield versus a running back, I just don't see it sticking. And it's the same thing. Chad and I used to play a lot of fantasy baseball, but this was probably, what do you think, 6-7 years ago, just when a lot of the analytics to baseball was coming in, and pitchers were getting changed out after 3 innings because that's what analytics said. Now baseball's put in this other rule that you have to face at least 3 batters, and relief pitchers are a little bit, you got to handle things differently. But that was around the time that Chad and I were like, well, fuck this. How are we supposed to plan for something that we have absolutely no control over? And why are we wasting so much of our time doing this? And that's the way I feel about fantasy football right now, is I don't think that it's going to be around for much longer. Anything that gets too mainstream becomes uncool. People are still going to play it. It's still going to be a thing, but it's not going to be the kind of thing that I'm going to invest the same amount of time in.
Yeah, like I said, I'd rather put my money into a couple props every week with a higher return value than me waiting 18 weeks to maybe win some money when I can get quick turnaround, literally doing the exact same thing.
Right.
If I think CMC is going to go off, I'll just take a couple prop bets on CMC, maybe win 30, 40 bucks, and flip that every weekend. That's a lot easier than me trying to wait 18 weeks to win 400, 500, 600 bucks, whatever it is, whatever your league is. I'll see the higher amount of money you put into your league, that's probably the more money you would bet weekly anyways.
Right.
And the way that they give out free money now on every single betting site across the board. But we only use one here on this show. That's Cool Bet Canada. Make sure we throw that out there because they are the best guys in the country. But yeah, they said there's platforms all over the world. And so it makes more sense where guys are going to start leaning that direction. Because no one wants to wait when they can get it now.
And that's the thing, too, with this new, you guys know about it, daily fantasy. So for a week on whatever app it is, I think Cool Bet had a league this year. You can pick guys or pick games and kind of go that way just week by week instead of having one team the whole season. Now it's all daily fantasy. So you can pick this week, you think, what's his name's going to go off? And they put him at a price point. You pick, and then go through that way.
Yeah, Coolbet doesn't let me play in their daily and weekly leagues anymore because I took down that one year and it was 10 large, I mean, not like they weren't going to pay somebody. I'm sure that they appreciated that I won, but it probably didn't look good in optics that the guy that won it was also like part of like a group, like, co-hosting a show that they sponsored. So whatever, like that shit wasn't rigged. This shit isn't rigged. Um, how about the Cowboys have decided that Kellen Moore's not their guy. I think that was kind of like a foregone conclusion. They're just letting the dust settle. I don't even think that they were ready to make the decision. I think that he made the decision because basically within 24 hours he's already signed on with the Chargers. So I don't know. I don't know how it works for tampering for coaches, and I don't know if you guys know anything more about that. But there's absolutely no possibility that this deal wasn't worked out before he was let go. Correct?
All I know is that he went to a phenomenal situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
OC, like franchise quarterback, stack receiving core, great running back. When that O line is healthy, they're right near the top of the league,
Yeah.
and you're getting all those gifts just given to you. And I don't think he was the issue in Dallas. I think Mike McCarthy was the issue. And
Or
I
Dak
think
Prescott.
that was going to go down that road. Dak Prescott is it. Justin Herbert is significantly better than Dak Prescott. Um, you don't have this really weird dynamic in the backfield between like he had with Zeke and Tony Pollard. It's like he had to keep too many people happy in the backfield, which Austin Eckler's there by himself.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
And they don't even run the ball anyway. They just throw it to him.
They just throw it to him so he gets
Yeah.
his touches that way. And you have receivers across the board where in Dallas you had CD Lamb. And you have an up and coming tight end in Everett as well there. So like his offense is going to succeed. I love how the fact that he was supposed to be the guy after Jason Garrett.
Yeah.
That was their plan the whole time. And it's kind of what Jerry Jones has always done because that's what he did with Jason Garrett as well. He came in as a former player, quarterback coach, OC, head coach. It's like Kellen Moore saw the writing on the wall, or he wanted just to disassociate himself from Mike McCarthy. And I think it's more that than it is anything else.
Yeah, and I agree. And the backup quarterback becoming OC is going to be the new hot thing. And it's not like that's a new thing, but it's going to continue to be more prevalent. A guy like Davis Webb, who just is getting ready to step away from football, apparently has already been offered multiple different positions as a quarterbacks coach. I mean, I remember him as a third round pick that never played anywhere, but apparently this guy is like a quarterback guru of some type. It's interesting to think like the amount of people that can do that and be that kind of guy. Like Jordan Palmer, Carson Palmer's little brother, was a guy that played in the league a little bit, but apparently gets all of these quarterbacks ready for the draft, right? Like he is the top tier, like independent quarterback coach that there is out there, but he didn't have the ability to do it at the level of these guys. So if he can teach them a little bit of what he has with the skill level, then I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense that guys like that are getting the opportunities. Whether J.J. Watt is joining D'Amico Ryans in Houston, which I don't even think the D'Amico Ryan thing is announced yet. But there was a little bit of like rumblings and rumors that because J.J. Watt posted a picture of him and D'Amico Ryans holding hands or something on the sideline in Houston wearing their Texans uniforms. That
is there? Brian Cushing is their strength and conditioning coach. That guy never passed a piss test, and that guy's now training athletes. What is it wild?
I didn't even know that. That's hysterical.
This guy failed every drug test of his whole life.
Yeah.
This guy is a strength conditioning. It's like Ben Johnson being like a track coach somewhere.
He's an ethics professor at Western. Oh, that's hysterical. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the Cowboys are going to do. Like clearly, they've made a little bit of a decision in the way of offensive coordinators go. I can't imagine that Mike McCarthy's calling plays. I'm sure they'll come out and say that that's not going to happen. But they have a $12 million cap hit on Zeke Elliott, and they have an unsigned Tony Pollard. They do have some money floating around, but I don't think that. I think that there's a high likelihood that neither one of them are back next year.
Well, Zeke already said he'll take a pay cut. He already came out and said that publicly.
Like a vet minimum is what he's gonna have to get.
Yeah, because Tony Pollard's going to want 10. If you were giving Zeke 12, you got to think, well, I outperformed him and then some. I'm going to want my bag because that's the only one he's going to get. Like every running back knows that. You only get one. So he has to go get it. And so I don't know what.
I think they're going to franchise tag him.
Yeah, they have to.
So I don't know what the top 5 salary for running backs would be right now, but
$13 million. I already looked it up.
$13 million. Okay,
I was on
so
the phone a couple days ago talking to a dream about it.
Yeah, so $13 million is a lot of money to give to a running back for 1 year. I don't think you can afford not to. For a guy like Tony Pollard, I would say caution yourself because the Le'Veon Bell story is probably going to hit Disney soon. You know, like this guy turned down $17 million from the Steelers because he thought he needed 20, and I think was out of the league within 2 years.
Now he's washing windows at the intersection, or
what? Yeah, he got his ass whipped. So, I mean, what they're gonna do is interesting. Interesting question for the group, and I kind of looked this up a little bit because windows don't close when you have a franchise quarterback, right? Like you assume that as long as you have your franchise quarterback in play, your window's not closing. But Cincinnati Bengals are going to look drastically different next year unless they decide to pay everyone. Granted, they do have money. They have about 40-something million to spend this year. Joe Burrow is heading into the 3rd year, which means they can officially start negotiating with him. I don't think that there's anybody on here that doesn't think he's the highest paid quarterback in the league going into the season, right?
He's getting paid.
Yeah, so even though that number is not going to be like sitting on the books this year, it'll be starting to sit on the books next year. Makes sense. You know, T. Higgins 3rd year, all of the receivers that have been as productive or not even as productive as T. Higgins have gotten paid in year 3. Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, list goes on and on and on. So how can Cincinnati keep these guys in-house? So would you go the route of just paying all your guys and hoping that you can knock something down in the next 2 years? Or if we're following like a Rams model, let's pay a bunch of guys, let's trade away our picks, let's see who we can get in here, let's roll with it. Or do you try and go more of what Kansas City's doing, which is maybe we trade T. Higgins because we have Tyler Boyd and, maybe we can pick up somebody in the draft. Maybe Jesse Bates has to walk in free agency because we can't afford to pay a safety $15 million when you're paying your quarterback $50 million. Joe Mixon, thanks but no thanks. You make a lot of money. Samaje Perine's not as bad as everyone thinks he is. Which direction do you go here? Because I think that the Bengals are literally at that crossroads to make that decision like this offseason. And a lot of people aren't noticing it and haven't noticed it yet because, well, look, they were playing 24 hours ago and everything that's happened to them.
Right? Everybody thinks this team's so young and great, but it's costing them nothing. Like, you got to understand, like, T. Higgins is gone. I think that's safe to say. And I think any team who gets him, if you can get him at the right price point, is going to be significant value. But he's going to be looking for that close to $20 million probably. I can't see him settling for 15. But the Bengals already know they have to pay Jamar Chase.
In reality, they gave Deontay Johnson 17.5. So rate T. Higgins somewhere in there, right?
That's 17 to 18. That's where he's going to get. But they know they have to pay Jamar Chase and extend him after next year. And he's going to be getting at least 21 to 22 million. He's going to get the Devontae Adams money.
I mean, Justin Jefferson's going to probably reset the market on receivers this year because he's heading into
probably.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
And so, that's happening. Burrow's going to get paid. So, and they're not going to split those two up. We know that. So that means the chips have to fall somewhere. So a guy like Jesse Bates, gone. It's going to happen. You're not going to pay a safety $15 million. If you're going to spend money on defense, it's going to be on a pass rusher. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. You can find safeties in the draft. You can find corners in the draft. All back end help. You can always get younger, stronger, and faster. That's how it is. T. Higgins, gone, like you said. and they have to get that O line. Like, if they're going to spend money offensively, it has to be on the offensive line. It can't be on another weapon because Joe Burrow will find another weapon.
Right, and like so you got T. Higgins in the second round. I think right now it's fair to say that we could rate T. Higgins and AJ Brown in a similar fashion, right? AJ Brown went in the second round, went for a first round pick. So if you're a team in the later half of the first round and you're willing to trade your first round pick and a player for T. Higgins, I think that you'd be stupid to not take it if you're the Bengals, knowing that you could probably take that first round pick and turn it into one of the top tackles in this upcoming draft because there is it's a pretty deep class, and you know anybody that's looking at taking receiver in the first round, you really don't have to. This like Marvell Mims from Oklahoma, he's going to go in like the 5th round. That guy is like a straight baller. So you don't.
Sorry, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, you don't even need to worry about it. So loading up on those like big tackles and the big tackles coming out of college. Worst case scenario, if a tackle doesn't work out, they get kicked inside. They rarely don't make your roster.
It's one of those things where like receivers, the way the game has changed, how simplified it's got from a receiver point of view, it's not super complex anymore. If you're fast, you're big, and you can move, you're gonna get on the field. And if you have a quarterback at the level of Joe Burrow, at the level of Patrick Mahomes, I mean, even like obviously like even like let's show Trevor Lawrence, his receiving core was good. It wasn't great, and I don't think Trevor Lawrence is at the Joe Burrow level yet by any means. Mm-hmm. And look at the numbers that those receivers put up, and those are guys that no one else wanted. Outside of Christian Kirk, they went and they paid him, and they made sure that happened. Mm-hmm. Marvin Jones is a journeyman. Zay Jones has bounced around the league. So you have guys that can do the things that you need to match your quarterback skill set. It doesn't matter where you get them. So keeping a guy like T. Higgins isn't a necessity for a team like Cincinnati when they're just going to go find another big body receiver that can go down the field. Like you said, Mims from Oklahoma, use him as the example. They're a dime a dozen coming out of college. Receivers and back end defensive helper, that's where you're going to get all your guys at depth. You don't have to go high on them. You need pass rushers, interior linemen, and offensive line. That's where you're going to see the draft going outside of quarterbacks. Yeah, I think we're always going to see those top receivers go because guys they need a guy right now. If you already have a number one receiver established like Cincinnati does, they're not going receiver in the first few rounds. There's not a chance. Mm-hmm. They're going to do the things that build up and protect. Like kind of what we said about Tom Brady into Tampa. I said they had to protect their investment. The first they did, they went and got a tackle. They got Tristan Wirfs. They went and brought an offensive line that Tom Brady wanted. That's how they won in 2020. And a team like Cincinnati, they're going to be like, Joe, what do you need? And I can promise you right now, the answer is not going to be a receiver.
No.
Like Chris Long just stole his lunch money and then gave him a wedgie and hung him up on the back of the door handle on the way out of Arrowhead. Like I can tell you right now, they are going offensive line.
And they kind of have to.
I think what people forget about that team too is this year, his last name's Cameron Britt. He was a rookie DB, and then you also had Dax Hill that got significant playing time. That's a rookie DB. It's tough to come in the league and start as a rookie DB right away. They get on specials, they make plays that way, but it's tough to start.
Yeah, and
it's tough to do.
Dax Hill, I think, was like a 7th round pick, right? So these are all guys. Of the 22 players that were dressed for Kansas City on defense, 8 of them were rookies.
Yeah.
You know, like you can make it happen, you can make it work.
Yeah, exactly. So that's 2 things they're going to have to go out and get an O-line. T. Higgins is gone. I agree with Chad. You still have Boyd there, and he's not a guy where teams are going to pay him. He's starting to get up a little older in age and those sorts of things. So no one's going to go pay him a crazy amount of money. You keep him as a second option that's a great second option to have. And like you said, find a guy in the draft. There's going to be one. There's always one that we don't know about where all of a sudden they're drafted in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and they're a perfect third option for you. And with a quarterback, you have a quarterback like that should be perfectly okay. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown that plays for the Lions. He was a 5th round draft pick. So you're not telling me that the Bengals can't go scout some receivers that they think could come in and be a good third option?
So that's what I was, so Mims from Oklahoma, Mingo from Ole Miss, and Reed from Michigan State are all guys that are third day picks, and all guys that'll be starters on teams like this coming year. So, if not starters, like third receivers, slot receivers, whatever the case may be. We kind of went off on like our little offseason tangent, and we're gonna have a ton of time to talk about the offseason. But we do have a huge Super Bowl show coming to you live from. We're gonna be back at the bar, live for an hour and a half, 2 hours. We're gonna break down some stuff. We're gonna go over best bets. Typically, we've had lots of guests. This time, sounds like we just have way too much to talk about. So we will see who comes on with us. We'll figure it out. I don't think that we're going to be live next Monday because we got a couple things to work out. But the next time that we talk on here will be hours before the Super Bowl. Couldn't be more excited. Go Steagles. Look up Pitt, Phil, Steagles, 1943. Get yourself a history lesson. And we will see you guys all in 10 days, 11 days, whatever it is. And